We're going to do the OpenAI update corner. It seems like we do that most weeks, but there's a lot of OpenAI news as usual this week. The first, we'll go with the least gossipy, most developer related news first. DevDay just occurred this morning, actually, as we record. It'll probably be yesterday by the time this airs. And the big announcements from OpenAI DevDay were speech-to-speech API, basically their advanced voice mode for third-party developers, where ChatGPT or the API in this case can respond with all sorts of tones and tempos, and it can whisper, it can laugh. Now that's available to third-party developers. They've also announced fine-tuning with images, which allows you to fine-tune their image recognition and analysis with as little as 100 images, actually, which is pretty darn cool. So this allows developers to build image-based applications and tune them to their particular use cases. They've also announced automatic caching or caching, depending on your accent, on their end. So if you send them a prompt that's more or less the same, they'll respond from cache, which will actually be a faster and cheaper query. So it can reduce latency by up to 80% and the cost by 50% for long prompts. And finally, the last big announcement was what they call model distillation, the ability to create mini models that are unique to your use case, powered by or trained by their frontier models, which is something a lot of model developers, mini model developers were doing offline, doing kind of on their own. But now OpenAI has made that really easy to do right there natively in their environment. So Amir, that's, as usual, the pace of change is pretty high, especially given some of their drama that we'll talk about a little later. What do you make of this as a former, head of developer platform for Twitter, head of developer advocacy for Slack, having a deep love for developers in your heart and your mind, I know. What do you make of this these developer tools?
So this is developer relations wet dream. This is like product releasing one after the other, good value to developers. This is amazing. And Sam Altman actually tweeted the cost per token is going to be decreased by 98%, which really makes me think about, I don't know who coined it, but they said that this is going to be the most expensive you're ever going to pay for the most stupid AI API ever, which is very interesting. It's like the reverse of Moore law, where like the cost goes down and the value goes up. And I think that is very interesting for developers. So there's a lot of developers that are now thinking that using AI is too expensive, and they actually revert to running it themselves or going back from AI to non-AI. I think they need to realize that the cost of computation went down and the cost of AI will go down with it. All the other things that you talked about are amazing, like the ability to have a voice API that is fine-tuned. That opens up so many use cases. Image training opens up so many amazing use cases in factories and in security and in so many other places. So I think we're going to see a lot more startups building vertical solutions on top of what was released today.
So the tweet that you're referring to specifically says here 98% decrease in cost per token from GPT-4 to 4.0 mini, which is, a pretty incredible decrease in price. Now, 4.0 mini, one would argue 4.0 is more capable. Mini, I'm not sure how they compare exactly to 4, but the general trend is obvious, right? You called
Yeah.
it reverse Moore's law. I think technically it's just standard Moore's law, right? So packing in more tokens per dollar in Moore's law is, more transistors per unit of size or something. So this is an exponential curve, suffice it to say. And, we've talked many times on the show that these are exponentials on top of exponentials, right? And so maybe let's just unpack that for a second. What do we mean by exponentials on top of exponentials? Because we say that fairly casually. What that means is that the hardware is becoming exponentially more powerful, thanks to NVIDIA, right, and others. And the models are becoming exponentially more powerful. And the cost to serve the models, because of their efficiency, is becoming exponentially more efficient. And then the tooling to build these models is becoming exponentially more powerful. And the models themselves are helping to develop yet new tools and models. And so just in those few examples, you can see exponentials on top of exponentials. And then you might imagine exponentials in terms of third-party investments in the ecosystem, where more and more people are investing in the application layer and in other foundation models over time. And so this is what we mean by exponentials over exponentials. And, this is obvious maybe to many in the audience, but The human brain is just not designed to understand exponentials. We think in linear fashion. And so what that means is surprising shit's going to happen faster than you ever imagined. That's what it really actually just means in pragmatic terms. It's just going to go faster and faster and faster than you ever really expect. And it's hard for most people to predict what will happen most of the time. And so that's going to be a real crazy time to live through.
There is an interesting thing, thought experiment that all entrepreneurs now need to do, which is what was not possible yesterday that is possible today. I think that's a very interesting analysis to do. What parts of my business could become 10 times better? But in general, what couldn't have happened yesterday that could happen today? Like if you even take like the voice API and you just say, hey, could we do something that is empathetic with people with disabilities or with kids? Like there's so many interesting use cases that you could have done with just one voice that is very vanilla. And now you can do a much richer voice. Maybe you could do singing. Maybe there's so many interesting things that this opens up. And I think the people who are going to find the opportunities following these major changes are going to be very, very rich.
Yeah, but also what's going to be possible tomorrow that isn't possible today. You need to be careful in your question that you're not just filling holes in the frontier model, in the base platform, right? Because you don't want to be disrupted by OpenAI. And so you've got to think about really deep, really hard problems to solve. Actually on this, there is a criticism that is in the water generally, which is, oh, that app is just an OpenAI wrapper or just a frontier model or LLM wrapper. And the CEO of Perplexity said something very interesting. I caught just a fragment of an interview with him. And he said, you know what? I'm so tired of that wrapper story. You know what? NVIDIA is just a wrapper on TSMC. And AWS is just a wrapper on NVIDIA. Microsoft Copilot is just a wrapper on GPT. And he's just like, this idea that wrappers are value free or that wrappers won't become increasingly valuable as they become more specialized is a little bit silly. And I think he's right. There is the chance that what you're doing is just filling holes and the underlying primitive, in this case, the frontier model, may quickly cannibalize your differentiation. But if you're running uphill fast enough and specializing narrowly enough, I do think your wrapper can become valuable if you also solve the other business problems like distribution and, retention and virality and building a moat and on all this stuff over time.
I 100% agree. I think that like Netflix is a wrapper over S3, right? Basically,
That's
it's
right.
that's the fundamental of our business in tech is that everything is a wrapper. Everything is built on top of what was built up until now. That's how the business is made. So I never ask myself whether this is a thin wrapper when I look at the business. I look about the value to the customer and the go to market. Like how fast can you get it out there and what's the high value to the customer? There's some areas where I judge on technology, but these are areas where, exactly to your point, I ask myself, will this be cannibalized by one of the big players, by the incumbent, and by the entity that has the most amount of distribution? But other than that, like the Jeff Bezos coin, customer obsession is what should move the market.
It's interesting actually because you didn't mention the two that I personally value the most. So when I'm looking at a startup, typically very early stage, I'm looking at the team. Do I believe these people
Yeah, yeah,
get it
yeah.
and they're going to make smart decisions and execute fast, and is their founder problem fit? And it's an unpopular thing to say, but I'm looking also at pedigree, right? Are they in the right place with the right mindset, really speaking in the right ways about the right things to the right level of abstraction with the right level of confidence, but also curiosity and coachability? It's like, it's all of this ephemeral X factor. And I'm also looking for distribution and unfair advantages around distribution, right? Because this is a game of distribution in a lot of
Oh,
ways as well.
of course, what you're saying is definitely true. Like you look at team, you look at TAM, you look at distribution, you look at technology. But to your point, like if you have a thin wrapper and you're gonna make a lot of value to the customer, and you know your business and you know your distribution, the fact that it's a thin wrapper doesn't mean anything. AI is an invisible technology if done right. People don't care if they use AI or not; they care about a great service.
You know what another name for a thin wrapper is? An MVP.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So that's all that means is they've started somewhere simple and they're going to have to build on top. All right, those are our thoughts on some of the announcements from OpenAI's DevDay. What do you think? What did you think about their APIs, their new automatic caching, their ability to distill models? What did you think about their new announcements and the new capabilities for developers? But maybe more importantly, what did you think about the opportunity, the changing opportunity for startups and app developers everywhere? Jump in the comments and let us know your thoughts.